Hey friends, it's Luke Crawford here. I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to be speaking at Rooted Revival 2025 at Houghton University. And as part of that series, have been developing some podcast conversations with individuals who attended Houghton in the past and are now alumni. These men and women have walked in faith in a host of different vocations in ways that I think are deeply inspiring and compelling for the active students as they consider what God is doing in them as current university students and what He wants to do with them in the future going forward. And so the purpose of these conversations is to go a little bit deeper in what we've had the chance to talk about in Wesley Chapel and the various Rooted Revival sessions, what it looks like to discern our call and purpose, what it looks like to lean into God in times of need, what it looks like to grow in our love for God and for community, and what it looks like to unpack our purpose and where and what God has called us to do to make a beautiful difference in the world. And so as you take the chance to listen to these conversations, I hope they encourage and inspire you. I hope they're cause for helping you to consider in a deeper and a new way how God is using this season of your life to equip you for exactly what He wants to do in and through you that only you can do to make an eternal difference in the world. So thanks for tuning in and enjoy these conversations. Well, hey everyone, I'm so thankful that you're choosing to listen in on this episode. As you know, we've been developing different conversations related to Rooted Revival 2025 at Houghton University. And I am really honored to have joining me Libby Little, an alumni from the class of 1970 at Houghton, and a woman with an incredible story. So Libby, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Thank you. My maiden name was Libby Brown. So if anyone hears that, and there might be staff or some oldie listening to this, they might remember that.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Absolutely.
Class of 70.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was one of many fortunate students that had the privilege of hearing you parachute in and speak when I was on campus. And I think what's really exciting for me in today's conversation is just realizing there's really a legacy of people that have come before us in so many ways. And I'm so thankful for that at Houghton. Mm-hmm. But Libby, maybe to start off, you could give us a bit of a snapshot of your journey, kind of the formative years of your life, especially, where you grew up. How you first, heard about Houghton and what caused you to say, yeah, I want to spend, really formative academic season of my life at what was then Houghton College, now Houghton University. Could you give us a snapshot of that season of your life?
Well, I like to think in my life that there have been special, shocking events. Maybe shocking in a good way. It stopped me. And so when I'm growing up in upstate New York here, I was a 10-year-old and my father was dying. And always the first event that I feel was I was saved by a chocolate cake. Now that probably sounds weird, but I really hold on to that I was initially saved by a chocolate cake during the whole years where my father was dying in a bedroom. I was age 8, 10. And this woman that we didn't know anything about, she kept bringing chocolate cakes on Friday afternoon. Wow. And when I get off school, sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her driving away or dropping the cake off. It's gorgeous cake in a Tupperware container carrier, and it was just for us. And there was no track, there was no church invitation, there was no picture of Jesus on the bag, there was nothing but the chocolate cake. And I was so drawn to this woman that I just wanted to follow her. I thought, that's a kind woman at a time when I'm really feeling like just crying. And so step ahead, and there's this Princeton graduate whose first church is in Valatia, New York, very insignificant things. And he's taking on his first summer job, and my father up and dies, and he has to do his first funeral. And it's my father's funeral. Wow. And I went to that funeral as a 10-year-old, of course, and there's the chocolate cake lady. I'm convinced that I didn't hear anything else that day, but I wormed my way over to her pew and sat with her. Not because of what was said or what was sung or anything else, but because of that chocolate cake. So that was sort of the background to the preacher, that young upstart from Princeton, saying, I'm going to take care of this family. This family has suffered. They're my first family, my first suffering family. And he kind of guided me along, paid my way to my first Christian camp, and then drove me out to Houghton and said, this is a good place. You can't afford Wheaton. I'd like you to go to Wheaton, but you can't afford that. And this is too far from your mother. That was too far from your mother. Houghton's the same state. We can keep track of you. So I was nurtured by this pastor who drove me to Houghton.
Wow.
And so skip ahead, so you got the chocolate cake lady, this first pastor that took an interest, a deep interest, to bother to drive me there. I mean, pastors are busy people, but he did. He drove me there, and then I had 4 years at Houghton, and honest to God, really, I remember nothing from Houghton except 2 people, Warren and Ella Woolsey. If I had a choice, I would put a plaque on there somewhere in Houghton for Warren and Ella Woolsey. I was an English lit major, but I wanted to take what they call as an independent study on mission, because I was thinking about mission. And so I had all this English lit, I had all the requirements, all of those things. I was an okay student. But this Warren and Ella Woolsey, he agreed to let me do an independent study on mission.
Wow.
Under him. And I was the only one. I was his only independent study. And they had me to their house every week at their dinner table. And we did not talk about missions, like the books, the book list that he gave me. Oh my goodness, the journals I had to read, these mission journals, international mission journal, all these things, the biographies, the histories, all of it. I don't remember one author or one topic. My mind was so focused on this couple that loved, I think it was Sierra Leone. They loved these people.
Yeah.
And they would smile and laugh about their experiences there and the customs there. And I just thought, you're so different from what I'm reading in this book. Like, I want to be you, not what's in this book or in this journal or in this course.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a good mark. I passed, I think. But what happened was God was really moving me through them.
Yeah.
Really. And through the example in their life of living and loving with people who were very different from them. And I never heard them talk about their converts or their success or any of that. It was so focused on living and loving where they were that you almost thought, wow, if we weren't sitting at this kitchen table, you'd be back there in any minute, wouldn't you? Yeah. It was just so powerful. So that was my experience at Houghton. I mean, there were a lot of things. A lot of things. I held leadership positions and this and that and did a lot of courses. And I guess, graduated.
Mm.
But they were the key.
Yeah.
Those two that invited me out of everything into their home once a week. And somehow I got the notion, we're all blurry at that age.
Mm.
We think we know so much about, what it means to follow Christ. Somehow I got the notion that they follow Jesus. And whatever I do in my life, I just want to follow him like they do and make my home. And so then you move to the next step, which is Gordon Conwell, where Tom graduated from. He wanted to go on, put medicine aside for a little while and go to Gordon Conwell. And he was a new Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're out there at Gordon Conwell. And the final day of his course, of course, Christy Wilson was a big deal in his life. Christy Wilson was one of the first ones, really in Afghanistan, first of this generation, of that generation, 60s, 50s, 60s. And he was speaking Afghanistan all the time in his course. And so Tom got a fill of that. But it was Floyd McClung from Youth with a Mission, those early days, 1969, 1970, that spoke about friendship evangelism. And our ears perked at a chapel. And he talked about sitting at a table in Kabul where he was surrounded by hippies. And he had never tried any drugs. And yet here he invited them to a meal from the hippie flop houses in Kabul. And that was ministry for him. And he invited some of them to live in their home and, help clean and do laundry and study the Bible.
Yeah.
And we were fascinated by it. And the houses were called Del Aram, a warm heart. And that resonated with both of us. And we thought, sure, let's give a year. Why don't we do that? Anyway, my father's putting too much pressure on me, Tom would say, to, take over his practice, his eye practice in Hudson, New York. Just let's put that aside. Too much pressure from Dad. Let's go and travel. And, so it wasn't like a mighty call from God. It was being attracted at, sort of led along by this sense of what is the heart of what we want to do? Where's the heart in this thing that people are calling missions? What's the heart of it? And it happened. I mean, it happened right through my life, from that chocolate cake lady and Warren Woolsey. And I'm not making this stuff up. These were people that had so much heart in what they were doing that it couldn't be boiled down to statistics or success or strategies, mission strategies. I never heard a strategy. That word wasn't there. 5-year plan. It wasn't there. How to cover the land. No, it was how to be a real person with somebody else in a different context, really.
Yeah.
That, to me, was cross-cultural mission training.
Yeah. Wow. And there's, you give me so many questions I want to ask off of that. I'm curious to know really quick, when you were at Gordon Conwell, or Tom was, did he ever have Elizabeth Elliot as a prof? Because I know that she lectured there in the 70s.
She lectured there. I mean, we've been at her home.
Wow.
So it's been a privilege to follow her stories too. Yeah. I think Christy Wilson was the big one there.
Certainly.
And then we went from there to Toronto, to University of Toronto, Wycliffe College, and studied there again under someone I can't think of his name just right now, but that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
again, that reinforcement
mm-hmm.
of living life with other people. And so we kind of said, mission isn't us going somewhere. As a decision, both of us, as a young couple, we
Mm-hmm.
felt this is going to be a mutual thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got there, even though we weren't hippies and doing all that stuff, and we didn't have those issues in our life. It was the culture of that time. All these people bottlenecked in Kabul, couldn't get to the drugs and ashrams in India. They were bottlenecked there in great need. And so we were in a situation to learn from them on what they were seeking. What were they running from? Why were they there?
Yeah. So I'd love
And
to.
then they were wondering why we were there. And so it was really a mutual around the table. And it was like Tom would keep saying, did you see how God showed up? Did you see it?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like arguing or debating or trying to press our point or trying to get them, saved or any of that stuff. It was really just mutual mission.
Yeah. So, Libby, I'd love to double click there and maybe give a quick recap for listeners who are putting some pieces together. So, you and Tom grew up in New York, and I understand you met in high school. He was studying to be an optometrist. You were at Houghton, and following your time at Houghton, you guys were one at Gordon Conwell and then up in Wycliffe. And yet all through this season where maybe his parents' life plan for him was that he'd take over his father's practice, you keep having these experiences that are pointing you towards serving cross-culturally and feeling like God's leading you to Afghanistan. And so could you speak to, like, by this point, if I'm understanding right, you're married, you've started a family, and what then first took you and your family to Afghanistan? And this is what, mid 1970s, is that right?
No, it was the mid 70s, before 1974.
Yep.
Yeah, 1976. Yeah, mid 70s. So we first started on the route to Tom loved languages. So we've started on this Wycliffe translator. We had great respect for them. And both of us separately visited Wycliffe missionaries in Guatemala.
Okay.
Missionary, yeah. And we were impressed by them. So we did the Summer Institute of Linguistics out in South Dakota. Just because of the whole language thing. Well, I failed, and he, aced everything out. Tom was so good at languages. So it was in the middle of that we got a Macedonian call. And that Macedonian call was from Floyd McClung, who met Tom at Gordon Conwell and said, we need you over here. We're being kicked out, and somebody has to take over the house in Kabul.
Wow.
So we said sorry to Wycliffe, because he was a good student. They thought they had great hope in him, not me, and said, we're just going to do this for a year. We might come back to you. And we did. We were gone. We had already, that was the last day of Gordon Conwell, was when he heard Floyd McClung. We were gone by December of 1976. December of 76. And it was 1977, March, we were in Kabul.
Yeah. Wow. So this is fascinating in that you say yes to this opportunity. You go to Kabul. Tom is serving as an optometrist. You're doing life with people and living out what you feel God's calling you to do and showing love to those around you. And yet it's 1979, December of 1979, that the war breaks out, the Afghan Soviet war, and you're right there in Kabul. And that's a war that continues for a decade. And so many people would have said, well, we came, we felt like we did what we were supposed to do. You know, war's breaking out. Our city is getting indiscriminately shelled at times. You know, there's times where we're without electricity, and, you know, there's so much that's a high risk in the scenario, in the situation. So we're just going to go back to safe, comfortable upstate New York. And you didn't, you stayed. Can you speak to what it was like for your family to be doing life, investing in community, following God's leading in Afghanistan during the 1980s, during this Soviet-Afghan conflict? And even after that, after in the 1990s, there was ongoing conflict in the country as well. So what gave you the courage and the conviction to stay? And what did you see as the implications of that decision to walk with the Afghani people in a time of real upheaval and difficulty and suffering?
Well, you know, the coup happened.
Mm.
We were all surprised when the overthrow of the king happened. I had never heard a gun before in my whole life.
Wow.
And here the place is being bombed and blown, and all these airplanes dropping bombs and rockets and everything else. I didn't know one from the other. It was just horror. And we had to stop the Dilaram house at that time. Tom was just volunteering down at the eye hospital, this one mission in Afghanistan, and it was an eye hospital blind school. And they said, well, he was so bored. The hippies slept until, 4:00 in the afternoon. We'd have them all over to eat at night, and some of them lived with us, but he was raring to go at 6:00 in the morning. What am I going to do? And the hospital said, you've got eye training, so come and help us. We need an optical workshop. So Tom was fully just volunteering down there days and then working nights at our home with the World Travelers. So when this happened, we closed our work with hippies, closed it right down. No more visas were allowed, and took a breather out in Pakistan. And it was so blazing hot there that we realized, it was so beautiful in Kabul. And we really liked the people in Kabul. And we had just started getting to know our neighbors. And the weather was so beautiful. And there were so many mountains to climb. This was just going through our head. Like, gee, I wish we could go back. Yes, there was a coup, but, it ended. So everything's going to be fine again, right? Right. So wouldn't it be a nice place to just grow our kids, So wrong, really.
Yeah. Wow.
It was so, like Tom said, we never got to go, here to the Bamiyan or Bandiamir, those gorgeous lakes, Wouldn't it be great to go back? And so was that the call of God? So we got this telegram and it said, we really need you at the hospital. Would you come full time? We'll give you a visa. And so,
Deal,
we went home to our church and we said, $40 a month won't make it.
Incredible.
We need some support. We're a family of 4 now. So, they said, sure, we'll come up with the support. And it broadened, and it was enough for us to get by, and we went back in. And then there was a murder of a couple out in Herat, where they were trying to get an eye hospital built and running in Herat. There was nothing, and there was so much endemic blindness from this one disease. And Tom said, would you like to go to Herat? I said, sure. Yeah, let's go to Herat. If it's as good as Kabul, let's go to Herat. And we went out there, and that's where the Russians actually staged their invasion, was through Herat and Mazar. And we had newborn, and it was full uprising. So what happened in Kabul was really, really minor. The real decision to stay, the real struggle, the real cry all night stuff happened right there in Herat, where the Russians came in, took over the government, took over the streets, took over the farms, killed people en masse, buried them alive. And then the huge uprising where all Afghans got on their roof shouting, Allah Akbar, all night long. And they came through with machine guns shooting anybody on the mud rooftops. And we were on our mud rooftop. We weren't singing Allah Akbar, but we felt it in our heart. God is great, and God can move in this situation.
Wow.
So we went back down and we slept in our room, and the next evening was this horrible uprising where villagers came and filled this wall-to-wall streets. You know, they had these little 5-foot walls in Herat for privacy. And we were right with all of our Afghan neighbors. And we were part of just a few foreigners. And a lot of people had fled by then that were out there working with World Bank, slaughterhouse project. And so during that night, we huddled in an outside kitchen basement, like it was just a dugout, really, for hot summers. And we could hear the screams of the Russians being hung and slaughtered all around us. Russian advisors, their families, they were being hung from the trees. And during the night, this one man, Padari Nassim, made his way. We had shared meals. We had sat on the floor and shared meals for 5 months. They took the place of being my sister and my mother and my father and all those special people in my home country. They became that to me. And I had no one else. And they sat there on the floor with me, and we cuddled each other's babies. And we became like family. And during that horrible uprising night where hundreds of Russian advisors were murdered, and we were right among them, and we could have been mistaken by all these villagers that were so angry with their hatchets and clubs and everything else. Padari Nassim made his way through that crowd and motioned at our gate to pass by. And in the morning, that morning, we didn't know that, I opened my gate, and there was Padari Nassim on the ground. I thought he was dead. I thought it would be the first person I saw dead. And he said, no. I just came. Because you're like my daughter. You're one of my family.
Yeah.
We had to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And so Padari Nassim was the next person that God used to say, they are your family. I've given you family. I've given you someone to live with, and you've got sisters and brothers and aunties. Your children have aunties and uncles here.
Mm-hmm.
You have all you need. And it was like a call of God then. Just stay.
Yeah.
Just stay. So it wasn't like we made a decision. I mean, yeah, we had to stay. But also, how would we leave? I like to add that because I think if there had been a vehicle or a flight or something, but everything was shut down. In some ways, we had no choice. It was too late. So, to be absolutely honest, that was how it was. So, to stay or not to stay, that was the question. And Tom was all, yes, we should stay. He's laid down his life for us. We have an example of Christ right here on our doorstep.
Yeah. Wow.
This is what it means. So we stayed, and it got worse and worse. And then they forced us to leave. The hospital was opened, it started, and the people entered the windows. The patients crawled through windows to see their doctors for the first time. And it was an amazing day in March. But then eventually the Russians said they closed the hospital and they said, you got to get out of here. Because they did terrible, terrible, terrible things.
Did that mean
to the Afghans. The invasion happened. We saw the tanks, hundreds of tanks roll through.
Wow.
So we were there for some time until they said, you're out. You got to leave. The government said, you can't stay here anymore. So we were sent to Kabul. And then I wanted to leave, and I said, I got to get out of here. I can't stand it, Tom. And we were given a farewell party. And during the night, we both felt like God was saying, don't go.
Wow.
Don't go. And I was scared to tell Tom, and he was scared to tell me. We both had this mini vision during the night. Yeah. So it's not so much like we decided anything. We were just sort of being carried along in the path that God wanted. I feel like I've never really made strong decisions in my life. I've been carried along. It's like we can relax with God, that He knows where He wants us, and He'll get us there.
Yeah.
So it's not like a big scary thing, God's will. It was like He just kept us there.
Wow.
It's not very exciting, and it's not written on a wall.
I was going to say,
it was like,
this is incredibly exciting. Like, it's a phenomenal journey. But I hear what you're saying, that quiet, steady, consistent, faithful presence of God sustaining your lives. Yeah. Wow. So you're faithfully serving in Afghanistan. You've experienced a Russian invasion and all of the conflict and chaos that comes with that. Occupation. Yes, thank you. And that the Soviet-Afghan War ends in 1989. And yet that introduces you then to a new sort of upheaval, in that there's now a power vacuum and people grasping for power. So can you give our listeners just a snapshot of what then took place in Afghanistan as that power vacuum was kind of wrestled over by different forces, and who came to power in the 90s, and what that meant for you and Tom and your family, just as you continue to say, we're going to continue to follow God's call in our lives in this place?
Well, yeah, it was the Civil War years before the Taliban were the worst years of my life. And I often say 100 rockets a day was a good day.
Wow.
The bombs that just made these enormous holes in the ground, the rocket-propelled grenades, the blasted out windows, living with sandbags for the whole first floor and never going to a second floor. sleeping in a basement, not nice basement, awful basement. All of that. Those were the worst years. And personally, they were the worst years for me as a mother. We had a teenage daughter by then who needed sports and drama and all that kind of thing in 88. It was really started in 1988. And for me, we have focus on the family going crazy in America, everybody living by the law of focus on the family. And here we are focused on Afghanistan. So we were doing everything wrong by all the measurements back home. Because how were we to stay in Afghanistan and provide our children with as normal growing up as we could? There were no other young kids. The families were leaving. The embassy left. The expatriate community was down to nothing. And so our oldest one at 14 begged to go to the boarding school she had heard about in India. And that was the hardest day of my life. That tops all the hard days of my life, to no longer have her at the table. And so she went to boarding school. And then it came time for the second one, begging to go to be with her sister. And then it was in the 90s that our third daughter, 8 years old, was living in a house that was a triage center that had more blood on the floor and bloody towels and bloody sinks, where Tom would drag in the injured to our house, ask Katie to just hold their hand while he could get someone that did that, plastic surgery or somebody do that. Our house had emergency room doctors living in it from Chicago, volunteers coming over to help. It was rocketed. Our daughter's bedroom was blown up with a rocket. Her bed was in splinters. Her teacher lived in our basement with us. One teacher from England, Barbara Haynes, to help Katie get through. Katie was just 8. No, she couldn't go away. How could we stay and still serve our children? Those were the hardest decisions of my life. So staying in Kabul was not it. It was how this changed our family, how this cost us as parents. So it was horror outside, but it was also horror inside. There was a big war going on inside of my heart. Our house was open during that time because we were surrounded by our Afghan neighbors who also had kids Katie's age. And they would sometimes sneak over and play in the basement during Kate's school break time during the day. And we tried to make it as normal as possible. But often those days, years, months, were when the rockets started, between tea times, we'd say. There'd be tea time up in the mountains before they'd rocket the city. And then during tea times, the people would race to our house, the mothers and their children, and huddled in the basement because we knew right after tea they'd start blasting the daylights out of our streets. And so I called it basement bonding. That was mission, basement bonding. These were my experiences with my neighbors. And we hardly said a word to each other during these times. And I thought, I should be this, I should be that. I should be a spokesperson for God. I should be sharing, the 4 spiritual laws, something. Nothing. I couldn't talk. I just held my 8-year-old daughter.
Hmm.
Years later, a woman came back to Kabul and went to our office and asked for me. And she came to my house. And she said, "Do you remember that day in the basement?" I thought, what day? Really? There were lots of days in that basement.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "I was there and I was sitting next to you. And you never said anything, but you kept whispering into your daughter's ear, 'Jesus.'" And she said, "My body, every time you said that word, my body got warm, warm inside. And I couldn't wait to go out and ask someone who this Jesus was. I had to find someone." And she made her way out to Pakistan. She made her way to a church in Australia, where that church welcomed her and received her and her family. And she was a leader of a little gathering in Australia of people just like her. And she came back to tell me that story and to visit her relatives still there.
And it started
So,
with you in a basement as your city is getting shelled, just saying the name of Jesus over your daughter.
And who knows what happened to Mary in Australia, Madi. I don't know. So I'm off on track. I didn't get very far with that one. Sorry.
That's
that was
okay.
a precious story, though. Those kind of things kept us. Or it's things like Tom would say, "Okay, we can go. Well, you want to go back to your mother? You want to go back home?" Every day I wanted to leave Afghanistan. So don't think I'm courageous or any of that. I don't want anybody to think that. That's not true. I wanted to be with my children, and I wanted to sit around a little table with them every day of my life. And it breaks my heart that I couldn't. And so he would say, "Go ahead, but you're going to have to tell Jasmine or this one or that one or Zora, my good friend. You'll have to tell them that you're leaving because you want to keep your kids safe." And how do you do that? You want to keep your kids safe and sort of, I'm sorry, but you got to stay in the mess.
Yeah, you don't have the
option. It just
option.
didn't register as the right thing to do.
Well, and it speaks to, when we think of what Jesus does, he enters into and stays in our mess.
Stays. Yeah. Like it wasn't a choice, real choice. He had already planted us there. We were already part of the community. They were my family in absence of my own. They were my children's best friends. And so how could we leave? It just didn't. Or Tom would say, "Let's do rounds first at the hospital." And the hospital was blown up anyway. But So then it was always this driving thing in a war. You might have a hospital, but then it's all blown up. So then you got to sneak in and get all the equipment and get kidnapped and all that stuff. And then you have to set up clinics. And so, you got all these front lines in this city. We had 4 front lines, all these different leaders that wanted a part of the pie. And so, this month we're going to set it up there, and then we got to set up one over there, and then we got to get solar panels. There hasn't been electricity in years, and we got to get equipment in. And he said his name was Gopher. Gopher. Just call me Gopher, because I go for this and I go for that, and I have to cross into Pakistan through barbed wires and get to India to get the medicine for the eyes. So he was a gopher. He was not some fantastic doctor in some beautiful hospital. It was our living room. It was the car picking up bodies, not knowing if they were dead or alive. Those were those years.
Wow.
Yeah. So how do you leave?
Yeah.
I've never asked, how do you stay? It was just, how do you leave this? It's sort of like Gaza. They can't leave. Well, it's easier to come and go, I guess, but we had no way to come and go. How do you leave?
Yeah. Well, and in that journey, would you say in your own, I guess your own like spiritual formation, because sometimes the number one thing we need to understand a specific element of God's heart is to be in a circumstance or a situation, a setting where we have to lean on him in new ways, or we understand in new ways what his selfless love for us look like. Were there things that in your own formation that you're like, okay, I see and understand the heart of God in a new way because of the really awful reality of what I'm living through and seeking to serve other people in the midst of?
Yeah, I think, if you wanted to know, I had to have little quiet spaces where I was totally alone. And some of those times I would just sing hymns. I would just take my little mother's hymn book and just sing hymns, sing them over, because I had to tell myself again and again and again, this was real. God cares. And we made a point of singing to this one song often when we were most troubled. How firm a foundation, you saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in his excellent word. What more could he say than to you he has said? To who you have fled? To Jesus. Through fiery trials, you know all of them. Through all these things, I will not. The last verse is, that soul that on Jesus has leaned for repose, I will not desert to his foes. Though all hell shake, I'll never forsake. We knew that Jesus had promised that he would never forsake us, and that it would be hard and horrible. But we were not forsaken. I think that was really the best part. So we sang that all the time.
Absolutely.
It was sung at his funeral. So there were a couple good things. A lot of praise songs just didn't work. Just tell you.
Yeah.
They were in comfortable America, but we were not in comfortable America.
Yeah.
We were not being challenged by Cracker Barrel logos.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. That's the biggest problem in your life. You got it. If
that's the biggest problem you have, if that's where your persecution lies, you have big problems. So you have to go back to how firm a foundation.
Yeah.
That he'll never forsake us, no matter what.
Yeah. So I wonder, and you acknowledge the significance of that hymn and that it was shared at Tom's funeral. To the extent that you're comfortable, could you speak to the events of August 5th, 2010 and their impact on your life and what you and Tom were actively contributing to in Afghanistan?
Well, our home was in Afghanistan. That's where we lived 30 years. But occasionally we came back. And we came back for our 40th anniversary, July 18, 2010. Wow. And he said to me in Kabul, what do you want for your anniversary? I said, I want to go home and I want to be with my kids around a table. Sure. That's it. And he said, we'll never get them. You've got one daughter in Iraq, embedded with the military, working for the UN. You got another daughter going through a residency in Texas, pregnant with our first grandchild. Wow. And the other one is here in Afghanistan, working like crazy with war victims. So how are we going to get together in New York State in the Adirondacks for a camping trip? Family reunion. It happened.
Beautiful.
It did happen. And he left. And we had that beautiful time as a family. That is a gift from God.
Yeah.
We had 1 week under the same roof together in a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And then he left and we never saw him again.
Wow.
That was it. He was in a black body bag the next time we saw him. So I knew every day he would call me, for just a couple minutes because it was $8 a minute to call. We had no cell phone coverage like we have now. $8 a minute. So he was very thrifty. And he'd get all the medical stuff, the lists I had to take down, and then tell me where they were, what was happening, all of that. And then, I love you, goodbye. So that was our phone conversations. And he was like clockwork with it. Other side of the world. So he'd be up in the middle of the night with a huge satellite phone, and I would be with my little clip phone. And he would call me every night at the same time, and he didn't call. And I was visiting my sister who had cancer and was dying. And I had to leave her. And I said, I haven't gotten a call. I have to go back home. Something's happened. And she said, oh, for goodness sakes, we're just going to have this little time together. How can you leave me? I said, I have to go back to my house. I know something's happened. And on the way home, driving home from her house, I felt like God was saying, just pull aside. Just pull aside. And I pulled aside on the road. I mean, people might think I'm crazy to think all these things, but it happened. He pulled me aside, all alone, dark and night, on my way home from the Adirondacks with my sister. And he said, this is going to be very hard. Stay very close. And I knew. I knew then. And the phone call came the next day. And so from that point on, it was like it did happen. And it finally happened. I have to say that because we lived with the possibility of that for years. Tom was never in the safe basement. He was always out there getting fuel barrels away from the hospital that might blow up, away from the clinic. I mean, dragging people off the street, throwing them in the car, seeing if their heart was still beating by the time he brought them into our living room. He was made for that. God equipped him for that. And I had different equipment. But yeah. And so it was like I kind of knew it could happen any day. And it did. And my grieving went to the mothers of the young people, especially that were on that trip.
Libby, could you just give again, to the extent you're comfortable, just a little bit of context for people who might not be familiar with, and that, Tom's on a medical trip in a remote part of Afghanistan with a team of 9 others. Is that right?
Yeah. I wish I had their picture here. Sometimes I have their picture, sometimes. I think I took it down.
And
yeah, there was these young people and our Afghan co-workers. So we had a driver, of course, and Tom was the other driver of the other vehicle, 2 vehicles. And we had a cook for everybody. And that person was also the one that helped keep care of the donkeys that had the stuff on there, the medical equipment on there, and solar panels on their those. And there's the most amazing doctor from the UK. She was a ballet dancer, Karen Wu. And she just thought about the women in Afghanistan that have this terrible birthing process. And she begged to go. She was to be married in a couple of months. And the young Cardarelli, Brian Cardarelli, and he was the videographer. And Dan Terry was the negotiator. Each one, there was one that was from her pastor's daughter from Tennessee. And she was a social worker, and she was on the trip. Then we had our Afghan doctors, and 2 Afghan doctors were already up there. An Afghan dentist was up there that was trained by Tom Grams, who was on the trip, and he was killed. A dentist from Colorado. So they all had futures, and they were all, yeah. So we don't know much about what happened. We don't know who did it. And really, those things didn't matter to most of us. And we wrote eventually within the year. I think it was hard for some people, but it was interesting that most of us who were parents or spouses of those killed, including the 2 Afghan families, we signed a letter of forgiveness, and it was posted, plaqued in the clinics of Noor Eye Hospital, that we held nothing against the government, and that because we were forgiven for things that we had done in our lives, they could be forgiven too. And so all of us signed it and put fingerprints on it from the Afghans, thumbprints from the 2 Afghan women. So it was something that was beautiful that happened afterwards. Of course, I had to fly right there, and Molly, shouldn't use her name, our daughter, flew right there from Iraq. Everybody, just our daughter that was in Texas, who was pregnant, 9 months pregnant, doing her residency. She could not come, of course. But when we got there, and we got to the little, we shared a home with another foreign couple. We got there, and this man knocked on our gate and pounded on our gate, and he came in and he just lay on the ground, and he's crying on the ground, and I'm trying to get him up, and I'm just there for the first day back and trying to go through my husband's room and what he left behind and what he last ate before he left on this trip. What was the last things? And this man comes and just does this thing on the ground. And I said, get up, I'm tired, get up. And I got to go back in the house. And he said, no, stay here. I haven't finished. And I said, what are you finishing? He said, I must cry the tears of the valley where those people were killed. They served us and served us well. So on my back are all the tears of my valley. And I thought, oh man, these people, don't they grab your heart?
Yeah.
They grab it so deeply. He said, we had nothing to do with them. Don't believe the news. We had nothing to do with any of it. They loved us. And then he went on to say something that I will never forget. He said, in the whole valley where they worked with us, where they saw all the patients, there was a sweetness. There was an aroma. And I thought of Corinthians, the sweet fragrance of Christ.
Yeah.
And he said, that's what they left there, was this sweet aroma, a beautiful fragrance. So when the FBI came to the house there in Kabul, and they did all their investigations, Americans killed overseas, blah, they were very nice to us. And they said, you might not want this, but this is a notebook, one of these, Russian notebooks that we found in the scene. It's all covered with sand and blood. It's near your husband, and we've done our research, and it is your husband's notebook. Do you want it? It was in a plastic bag. It took me months to open that notebook. And I brought it back to America. And before I was asked to speak to the Lausanne conference in South Africa, I had nothing to say. I thought, how dare them ask me to talk? And it's just 2 months, I had nothing to say. I can't talk. And I felt like God was saying, no, you can talk. Go down there and get that out of the box. And I went down in my basement here. I rarely went to basements. I rarely go to basements these days. So it was a big deal for me to go down in this house to the basement and open Tom's box of things our daughters had gathered to send home to be here, even though he was buried in Kabul. And I went down there and I opened that plastic bag and the blood and the sand. And the last thing he was talking about to the team, whoever wanted to be there, when they gathered on that little Friday morning, which is our Sundays, the last Friday they were there, was on being the aroma of Christ. The sweet fragrance of Christ. So I don't know who was there, but anyway, that was the message. That mission is not strategy, it's not counting, it's not coming back and forth and leaving when it's convenient and going and staying when it's convenient, leaving when it's inconvenient, all that stuff. It's just not that. It's just all or nothing or all. Or nothing at all. You don't call the shots.
Yeah.
God calls the shots. And he leads. And he'll be there. And he carries you through, even when you don't know what you're doing or you think everything you're doing is wrong or goes against or isn't up to. I mean, I look at myself and I think I'm a failure as a missionary in terms of what it is, I think, because sometimes people say, well, how many people? Those kind of conversations. Maybe you don't know, but, success. And I can't even claim that woman in my basement because I didn't say it to her. I was saying it to my daughter. So I can't claim a thing. It's something about the aroma, the beauty of Christ, that somehow we can catch something of a whiff of the Holy Spirit in another person's life that is so attractive, it will take us across the world. And it will keep us through hell. It kept me through hell.
Yeah.
It brought me from that chocolate cake lady and that wonderful Warren Woolsey, Professor Woolsey, all the way through. It's those people. And all we hope is that fragrance of Christ has sort of, touched the shoulders, rubbed off on the people we meet. God takes over. God took over in Mary's life, didn't he?
Yeah.
I didn't have to see it through to completion. Half of what we do in life is incomplete. More than half. It's just not finished. Only Jesus can say it's finished. All we do is incomplete. It's just a one little part. But to do that part faithfully, I don't know. It's such an amazing trip with God, honestly. It's the most amazing trip. I've gotten off track.
No, this is so compelling, and like, yeah, to think. I mean, something I've often thought about when I think about you, Libby, is, that attack happens, and Paul and I'm so sorry, the attack happens, and Tom and his team, are killed in rural Afghanistan, and yeah, you're left picking up the pieces, and you've spoken to that, so beautifully, and I just wonder, for people who might be listening, very few who can relate to your story, but who
Yeah.
have sought to be faithful to where God has called them and what He's called them to do. And it's cost them, and it's costing them, and it's meant loss, and maybe the loss of a loved one. What would your word be to them in light of your story and your journey? Because sometimes it can be so, those can be make or break moments in our journey with God. What would you say to that person?
I think of a poem that John Piper, do you know?
Yes, yeah.
A lot of stuff he wrote I didn't agree with, but this poem hit me, and it hit me hard. And it's, "Oh, the mercy of our King, who takes from life its bitter sting, and with his blood, and sometimes ours, brings triumph out of hostile powers, and paints with crimson earth and soul, to make the bloody work whole. What we have lost, God will restore, that and himself forevermore." And so from that day when they were shot down, I believe God has been keeping his promise. And with his blood, and sometimes ours, he brings triumph over hostile powers, and paints with crimson earth and soul, until the bloody work is whole. What we have lost, God will restore, that and himself forevermore. And this has been, since that time, 15 years ago, this has been an exercise in recognizing God's restoration of what we have lost. It's not like, oh, heaven is a wonderful place, I can't wait to get there. It's like I keep seeing heaven unfold. And that when God told me way, way back in 1977, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'm here. And when you sing every time, I'll never forsake, that's God never forsaking us, because we, of course, forsake him all the time. But God never forsaking us. That's true. And this has been a great and wonderful adventure of seeing how God keeps restoring in my children, in my grandchildren. My granddaughter at 15, in a couple of days, she'll be 15. She was born right after Tom was buried. She called me in February and said, "Tell me about Grandpa. I want to write about him. I never met him, but I'm doing this, I don't know, some kind of contest in Texas, youth contest, writing contest." And she said, "Just tell me everything you know about him, Grandma." That is restoration. That, to me, that's restoration. Yeah, they were robbed of a mighty good grandpa. But God is in the business. He will never forsake. And I feel like, man, I was married 9 years ago. to a man who cared for his wife who had Alzheimer's for 7 years. Talk about a real find, this guy. He is wonderful. And we're just finding restoration in his family and mine. So it's not just pie in the sky. It's right here.
Yeah.
God keeps proving and proving. It's like sometimes I felt like, God, you're bending over backwards for me. You know, so it's not so much like we do this sacrificial life. It's like he just keeps sacrificing himself to prove himself that he is faithful to the end. So how do you not stake your life on that kind of promise? I mean, what else is worthy of your life? Really? What else?
Yeah.
You've got this Savior, yes. Brother, yes. Keeper, he's everything. Provider, Jehovah Jireh, my provider. You know, and he's been faithful. I'm 76 years old now, and he has never forsaken me. So that last verse, never forsake. He's true to his word. He's never forsaken.
Yeah.
And so one part you had in here about forgiveness, I just wanted to say that wasn't an issue. And that is a praise to God.
Yeah.
Like when I got the news and the newspaper people, I remember this John Grandal, he was the first one from Times Union, came to speak to me. And, you know, he mentioned forgiveness. And it was like, that's not an issue. It's not an issue because our life is God's and he's never going to forsake us. Yeah. And so what, even in this tragic loss for my children, for my new grandchild, this tragic loss for Afghans, you know, really, Tom was just a brother, a great brother to so many of them. They said, we lost a brother better than a brother. For them to say they lost a brother better than their brother is a big deal. For an Afghan, that they would often say he was better than my brother. So there was loss all around, but there was no issue about forgiveness or who did it. Don't you want to know? I didn't want to know. The CIA, FBI wrote me a letter 2 years ago, or in 2020, saying, after 10 years of investigating, we just can't come to a conclusion. And I thought, I came to a conclusion way back, a long, long time ago, that he's worthy of our life, no matter what, because he'll never forsake us. Yeah, it's a great journey. It's been a hard journey. And lots of tears and lots of rebellion. But, you know, no real sense of, I should have done it. You know, we should have done something else. Tom told me early on, don't say should have. Don't say should have. He's got us. And he's got our family. So it was worth it. And I just thank God for people like the Chocolate Lady and Warren and Ella Woolsey. I want to say that at the end. They stand out. So whatever professor might be listening, invite your student home.
Yeah.
If you really want that student to remember you 55 years from now, invite them home. Yeah. Eat with them around a table. And the influence of Christ in your life will never leave them. And I believe that.
Yeah. Oh, that is, wow, beautiful and compelling and humbling and heartbreaking and wonderful all at once. Libby, you've been incredibly generous with your time. You've been incredibly kind to speak from the heart.
Did we go way over, didn't we?
That's okay. This these are sacred conversations, and they're worth going overtime for. And I just wonder, I want to say thank you. I'm so grateful for you, for your story and your faithfulness to God, and so grateful that you would share that with me and with especially the Houghton students and community members who will listen. Would there be any closing thought you would want to speak to before we wrap things up?
I think don't change the aroma of Christ. Don't shortchange it. Don't shortchange it. It's effectual.
Mm-hmm.
And we think words, no. I love Eliza Doolittle. Words, words, words. I'm so sick of words. I hear words all night, words all day. I don't know if you ever saw My Fair Lady, but that was in my time. And she was telling this professor, words, words, words. I'm so sick of words. Words all day, words all night. Is that all you blimies can do? Really, so much is said. So much is said in this place of hospitality where we share a meal. And Tom often said that was that sacred place where we're sitting with Afghans on the floor. There's no preaching, there's no debating, there's none of that. We are sharing lives. We're holding their children. And we may think that that's not mission. That is more mission than it's mission. Yeah. And it's an effectual mission. I know because I hear the testimonies of the people that worked with Tom. You know, they didn't really have to say anything. It was when I went back 2 years later for some memorial thing. The Afghans, they didn't have to say stuff. I knew that they knew. And that was enough. And people might say that's kind of fluff. Not me. I don't think it's fluff at all. What that woman did with the chocolate cake followed me through life. What Warren Woolsey did followed me through life. What they showed me about Christ, in them, the hope of glory. That's what impacted me. Not all those words, not all those arguments, not all those strategies. Yeah. No, I think we missed the mark otherwise.
So the invitation is to be a people who live on purpose, recognizing that it's often in the unspectacular, everyday moments of self-giving love that lives are shaped and transformed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have so many images rushing into my head that just prove that over and over. A neighbor's son fell from the roof. They have flat roofs. And said, please come to the hospital. Please pray with us. Pray with us. And there were all these prayer rugs floating all over the place and shaking. And so we just stood there and we prayed near the son. And nothing dramatic happened. The kid did live, but, you know, we don't. And the other woman across they had 6 patients to a room. And this woman said, come here too. Come here. And come here. And come here. And, who could have planned that? These are like common events. And it's so different from what you read in a book. And how to do.
Yeah.
How to do.
Yeah, but it's saying yes to God and recognizing and responding to the opportunities that he then leads you into. That
yeah, like these ordinary things, and he does wonder. So you do just give him a floppy fish and he just feeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're just floppy fishes,
But he's multiplying it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Libby, well, we could talk for hours, but I so appreciate this and just wanted to thank you again for carving out this time. I know that this will be a benefit to the people that listen, and really am grateful for you and what you continue to do, through your life and your story. So thank you.
Thank you.